sorry. I am nervous. This is tough stuff. I haven't talked about this. And, you know, my ex-husband texted me the other day, and he said, why in the world would you do this? Why would you bring up the past? To me, this isn't the past. This is my present. This is my life. And I'm trying to deal with it the best I can to move forward. I didn't like him when he was this age. I didn't like him at all. What kind of mother doesn't like their own child? Just his eyes. I don't like his eyes. His eyes, I can't describe it. Just looks like an evil look. This little boy hugging a teddy bear grew up to become a murderer. And that is really hard still to wrap my brain around. I wanted to go to college to become a nurse. My first year of college, I got pregnant with Derek. I was 19 years old, and I'm like, I wasn't ready to be a mom, and I was scared. November 13th of 1991, I had my baby boy. He was so perfect, and with his black hair and big cheeks. Thought about all the things we could do, you know, riding bikes and playing catch and playing with Tonka trucks and just doing boy things. As he grew up, he had a very bad temper. He was destructive. He was defiant. I remember going shopping with Derek, and we passed by these trucks, and Derek decided he wanted one.
Derek, put that back. You don't need another truck.
Then I told him, I said, no. I said, I don't have money for trucks today. We're buying groceries. Instead of putting it back, he slammed it on the floor and started pounding the truck on the floor until it broke. I knew in my heart I should be laying down the rules, but I kept flashing back to when Derek was sick. When he was about 7 weeks old, Derek got very sick with a respiratory virus and pneumonia. He ended up having to be life-flighted in the helicopter to a large hospital in Duluth, Minnesota. And the doctor had said to me, I can't promise you he'll be alive when the helicopter lands in Duluth. It was really hard on me. And I almost lost him once. I could lose him again. So I wanted to make his life happy. I wanted him to have his way. I wanted him to have what he wanted.
Abandoning this truck.
Okay. Derek was still throwing his tantrum. He wanted the truck. He wanted the truck. He wanted the truck.
Get him a truck.
So I got him a truck. Even though I knew it was wrong, I bought him the truck. I just didn't want to say no. I always noticed he had these things. I thought they were quirks, like OCD type behaviors. He wouldn't touch his food, a sandwich or a donut, even like potato chips. he would eat with a fork. And Derek never played with his toys. They just had to be, all his toys had to be in order. He wouldn't build buildings or anything. He just put them in order. He wasn't interactive. He just wanted to keep to himself. I think the first time I saw the antisocial behavior was when one of my friend's little boys came over to play. And they went to Derek's bedroom to play with some trucks. And Derek did not want that to happen. Derek would do this thing where he would his body would tighten up and his hands would go like this and he would shake if somebody tried to touch his stuff. I remember Derek, with two hands, pushed him in the chest, pushed him down, and started to hit him. I pulled Derek off, and the little boy's mom came in. I didn't tell her that Derek had pushed him and hit him. I had said that Derek didn't want to share his toys. So Derek stayed in his room by himself, and the little boy was out with me and my friend in the living room, just hanging out with us, while Derek stood guard of his toys.
Hi, pretty.
Come in. I started dating Robert.
He's gonna like you. I have a good feeling.
And the first time he met Derek, I brought him over to the house.
Hey, buddy.
And Derek came over to him. And my boyfriend was playing with Derek's hair, sort of parting it. And I asked him, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm looking for the 666 on his scalp." I didn't take it seriously, but I thought, oh my gosh, there is something wrong with Derek and other people can see it.
Hey, don't you, buddy?
I asked, I said, "Why did you say that?" And he said, I kind of was joking, but I kind of wasn't. It was just the look in his eyes, I think. When he was little, he had, the big, round, bright blue eyes. And then suddenly they just they weren't big and bright anymore. They were small and squinty. Like there was no emotion in them, that it was just a blank look. I was hoping that Robert and Derek would get along. I had no reason to think that they wouldn't, but I don't think I took Derek's temper seriously. I didn't think he would hurt people. Oh, I think this is the one and only kiss I ever got from Derek. I love this picture. I was always seeking Derek's affection. I was always trying to please him, to make him happy, to see if I could get this, to see if I could get a hug or a kiss or an "I love you." I kept trying, but I never got affection from Derek. Derek had never had rules before Bob came into the picture. It was Christmas morning, and we had all the presents ready, and I had bought Derek the newest PlayStation. I was so excited. I had taken my lawn chair to Walmart, and I had camped out, and I had sat, and I had waited because I wanted to get this video game for Derek. And Bob had gotten up first, and Bob had made a big breakfast. And Derek woke up and goes to open presents. And Bob said, before we open presents, we're gonna have breakfast. And Derek's like, I'm not hungry. You know, he wanted to open the presents. And Bob said, we're gonna sit and we're gonna have breakfast.
Look, I said the presents can wait. Now take a seat.
This was the first time that anybody had ever tried to lay down the law with Derek. Derek said he didn't want to eat. He didn't like scrambled eggs. And Bob said, you're gonna sit there until you eat those eggs. And Derek said, fine. And I got up. I started doing dishes. Derek's sitting there. Derek's just sitting there. And he sat there. And he sat there. Derek sat there the whole day until it was time to go to bed. He did not eat those eggs, and he was gonna show Bob. The next day, Bob went to work. I went to his room and I told him, I said, today's the new day. I said, Bob's gone. Let's go open presents. But Derek was mad. He was still mad the next day that he didn't have his Christmas. Instead of being super excited that I got him this video game that he wanted, Derek smashed the PlayStation. Smashed it and walked away. Went to his room. And that's when I boxed it back up. And I took it to the store. And I told them that it must have got damaged in shipping and that I needed a new one. And the store replaced it. And I gave it to Derek. And then he had his PlayStation. I'm embarrassed that I did that. But I wanted Derek to be happy. I wanted him to have the video game. Bob was never physical with Derek, but Derek wanted Bob to get physical. Derek would be in his room playing video games, and we would say, it's time to go, let's go.
Hey, turn this off. We're gonna take your mother to dinner.
He would just sit there
Hey, come on, let's go.
and continue to play video games and ignore us. And Bob would get in his face. Bob would stand between Derek and the television and say, get up, we're going. Derek would stand up, they'd be chest to chest, and Derek would egg Bob on. Like, come on, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna hit me? What are you gonna do? Come on. Derek would challenge Bob. I think Derek wanted Bob to hit him so he could press charges and have Bob go to jail. Because I don't think Derek would have fought back. Whenever there was arguments between Derek and Bob, I always blamed Bob. Even if I knew that Derek was wrong, it was more important for me that Derek was happy than Bob. And I felt hopeless. I was thinking nothing is going to make him better. Nothing is going to make him happy. Macy was tall and thin and beautiful. She had long, dark black hair, big round brown eyes. She was really funny. She was really bubbly, really outgoing. Derek really changed when he met Macy. I had never seen him so happy. He was laughing, he was smiling. He was affectionate. And it made me happy to know that Derek was capable of feeling, because I wasn't sure. By this time, Bob and I's marriage was over. When Derek told me that Macy was pregnant, I invited them to live with me under the condition that they both stayed in school, that they helped me around the house, that things would be good. That's when he told me, "You better sleep with one eye open, Mother, because I'll slit your throat in your sleep." And I thought, he just might do this. Bang. This was little Gabe's first Christmas. This was a happy Christmas. Derek has a genuine smile on his face in this picture. Derek was a great father. He really doted on Gabe. Derek had graduated by this time. Macy was still in high school, so Derek took care of the baby all day long. He fed the baby, he changed the diapers. I was proud. We were really happy, but it was just a short window. It didn't last. Everything had to be Derek's way. The curtains in our house always had to be closed. I would get up in the morning and open the curtains. He would get up and immediately shut the curtains. The only time Macy was allowed to leave the house was to go to work. She had to go to work and she had to come straight home.
Where were you all day?
Out with some friends.
I don't care. You gotta come home as soon as you get off work. We are your life.
Sorry.
We are your life.
All right,
okay?
I apologize.
It seemed like it wasn't love anymore. It was control.
Hey,
Listen to me.
And they started arguing a lot.
You come home right after work, okay?
Derek.
And once Derek and Macy started fighting, Derek started fighting with me.
You're a pathetic loser.
Started calling me names. He always called me stupid. He called me pathetic. He would taunt me and laugh at me.
Look at you. You drunk?
He would get in my face and he'd be, "You're such a loser. That's all you do is drink. And that's how you cope with the world is you drink." And he would just call me pathetic. I did feel pathetic. I believed every word he said. I wasn't strong enough to stand up to him. He started making threats to harm me when he was about 19. Derek bought an AK-47 without my knowledge. When I first saw it, he had it on the kitchen table. He had it out. He was cleaning it. And I walked in the kitchen and Derek aimed the gun at me. And he said, "Do I scare you, Mother?" And I thought, oh my God. And that's when he told me, "You better sleep with one eye open, Mother, because I'll slit your throat in your sleep." Bang. And the look on his face he had, I believed him. I thought he just might do this. I stayed in my bedroom all the time, even though it was my house. I didn't want to be out. I didn't want to see him. I had one of my friends put a deadbolt on the door.
Hey, what are you just gonna drink in your room?
He'd knock on the door and ask me if I had all my paperwork in order and about my life insurance and who was the company and where were the documents.
Answer me.
And I would drink alone in my room. That was my escape. My room was my physical escape, and my alcohol was my mental escape. I wanted to be numb. I didn't want to feel. But I felt guilty. I thought, what kind of mother doesn't like their own child? That just isn't natural, you know? But then I would tell myself, he's not natural either. I was afraid of Derek's temper, his anger, and that I thought that he was a ticking time bomb. I went to the front door to see why is it wide open. And that's when I saw a trail of bloody footprints. I had no idea when Derek would ever leave my house, ever. I pictured myself 80 years old with him still living with me. I saw no end in sight.
I can't do this anymore. No.
Macy and I talked about asking him to leave, and we just couldn't come up with a solution.
He's going to hurt somebody. Me, you, the baby.
Because if we kicked him out, he'd have nowhere to go. And as a mom, as mean as he was, I couldn't do that. I couldn't kick him out and leave him homeless. I hated every day. I would wake up in the morning and go, what's gonna happen today? We had a dog. Her name was Lucy. She was a yellow lab. Derek never liked the dog because he just hated the dog hair, couldn't stand the mess. I got sick and I had to have my gallbladder removed.
Lucy! Where's Lucy?
And when I got out of the hospital and came home. Lucy was gone. And I asked him, like, where's Lucy? Derek said that she had run out in the street and got hit by a car. He said he called the police, and the police took her to the vet, and they had her cremated. I asked him, where's Lucy's ashes? And he said that he didn't keep them because it was extra money to keep them from the vet. I believed he killed Lucy. Lucy never, we lived in that house 2 years. Lucy never ran out on the road. But I guess I just kind of tried to pretend to believe his story because I didn't want to believe otherwise. I didn't want to believe that he killed her. So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, she got hit by a car. I was afraid to ask for help. I was afraid that Derek would find out that I had talked about what was going on. And I was afraid of the repercussions, what Derek would do if he found out that I told people. My dog was gone. I didn't know what was going to be next. Macy came to me. It was her birthday. She was turning 18, and Macy said she's moving out. She had told me it was because of Derek's controlling ways and because of all the arguments. She just wanted to move out and to be able to live her life and not have to do whatever Derek told her to do. Macy was leaving just herself. She was leaving the baby with us. She knew Derek would never let her have the baby. I was jealous that she was getting out. I was jealous, but I was proud of her. She was doing something I never had the guts to do. She was leaving. And I cried and we hugged and I told her I understood and I told her I was proud of her. And I told her I was glad that she was getting out and she was going to be free from Derek. She left. I told Derek that she wasn't coming home. And Derek didn't get mad. He didn't do his typical smash things around the house and make holes in the house. He didn't.
Did you hear what I said?
He went into shutdown mode, which was almost scarier. It was scary that he was so quiet. I was just waiting. I was just waiting for the bomb to go off. Derek was acting really weird, like I had never seen before. Derek had the curtains open in the living room.
Why is she doing it?
And he was pacing back and forth in front of the big picture window, wringing his hands, saying, "Gabe's never gonna call another man dad. Gabe's never gonna call another man dad." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What is wrong with you?" And he's like, "Gabe's never gonna call another man dad." He just kept saying it over and over again. And it scared me to death. I didn't know what to do, so I called my ex-husband. I called Robert, and I said, I'm like, something's wrong with Derek. I said, can you talk to him? And Bob says, yeah, I'll call him later. I'll call him when I get off work. Later, Robert emailed me saying he had talked to Derek. Derek seemed depressed and had felt hopeless, but he said he was going to be okay. When I came home, I noticed right away, I saw Macy's car in the driveway, but I didn't see Derek's car. And I looked at the house and the front door was open. And right away, I'm like, okay, something's not right. I went to the front door, see why is it wide open? And that's when I saw a trail of bloody footprints. What immediately went through my head was Derek got mad and punched the mirror and he's bleeding. I followed the footprints through the house and down the hall, leading to my bathroom. The bathroom door was closed. And coming out from under the bathroom door was a huge puddle of blood. And I opened the bathroom door and I found Macy in the bathtub with her throat cut. I felt like I was watching a movie, or I felt like I'm like, this can't be real. This can't be happening. I was slipping in her blood. I went to get the phone to call 911. The police showed up. That's when I had thoughts of oh my God, where's the baby? I was telling the police, the baby, I don't know where the baby is, the baby. And they went in the house and they looked around and the baby wasn't there. My thought was, he's gonna do something to the baby and then he's gonna kill himself. The police took me to the station. I was covered in blood, and then they kept me there.
Why is that? I don't know where he is. I've never not known where he is.
This was me at the police station right after I found Macy. I was begging them to help me find Gabe. And I kept yelling at them to stop talking to me, to go get go look for the baby.
What does it matter what my birthday was or what I used to do for a job?
I was frantic. The police kept asking me, where do you think he went? Where do you think he'd go? I had no idea where he would go. About 5 in the morning, a motel clerk in Wisconsin Rapids recognized Derek and little Gabe on the television from the Amber Alert and called the police. And I was in panic mode. I didn't know if if the police came, if he would start shooting. I was frightened that Derek would kill the baby and kill himself. The police came and went to his room. And my son was arrested without incident in Wisconsin Rapids, and the baby was fine. they found that Derek's shoes were bloody. That was the bloody footprints that I saw in my home were from Derek's shoes. They found the knife in his vehicle. My son is a murderer.
Hey, Mother, it's me. I'm sorry about this whole thing. I didn't mean for anything to happen like this. I'm really sorry.
I was not expecting a phone call. I did want to believe he was sorry. I wanted to believe that he didn't mean for this to happen. They got into an argument and it got out of hand.
All I can say is I'm still just really sorry about the whole situation. There's nothing I can do about it now. I'd do anything to go back in time, but it's not how life works.
He was saying he was sorry, but he didn't sound like he was sorry.
I love you too. Please take good care of my baby.
I think it was the first time that he's ever said he loved me, and I think it was because he was in trouble and he needed help. I had met with Derek's public defender multiple times. Even though I didn't like him, I didn't want him to go to prison. I've always fixed things that Derek did. I had done it his whole life. That's all I knew, you know? Derek screws up, I've got to fix it. Derek breaks something, I've got to get a new one. And I thought, he's in trouble. I need to help. As this went on and I was talking to the district attorney and talking to lawyers, it just was like, what am I doing? Why am I trying to help him when who knows what will happen if he gets out? You know? What next? Will life go back to how it was before? Or will life get worse? Will he find another victim? When does this end? I got a text from a friend that said, OMG, exclamation, exclamation. Derek decided to take a guilty plea to Macy's murder. I was glad. I think I was glad. I thought, I'll be dead in 40 years. I won't ever have to be around him again. Gabe is mine. I adopted him, and he is my little boy. I've been raising him since he was 2. Just doing what I can to move forward with him to try to keep him as healthy and normal as I can. But every day, like, I'll see Gabe do something and it'll remind me of Derek and it freaks me out. I'm like, because I don't want him to be like his dad. I know it's probably not a big deal, but you know, if I make a pizza, Derek won't eat the pizza. I mean, oh my God, I called him Derek. Gabe. Oh, can I stop?
Yeah.
It's been almost 5 years since the murder, and I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to let people know what Macy and I and little Gabe went through. I know people are gonna judge me, and I carry so much guilt. I have so much guilt. I loved Macy so much, and I wish I could have saved her. She was a smart, beautiful girl, and I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed. Every day I wonder what I could have done different If somebody asks me, why didn't you do something?
They said the summer heat in northern Florida could make a man lose his mind. But on August 14, 1999, it didn't take heat to make the small town of Cypress Lake unravel. It took a scream. One that cut through the night like metal splitting bone. Neighbors still remember the sound. They said it came from the marsh, down where the cypress trees swallow the moonlight and the air smells of rot. For 26 years, no one could say what really happened out there. Only that a young woman named Claire Hensley vanished without a trace, and the town buried its terror beneath layers of polite silence. Until now. Claire was 24. Local waitress, brown hair, sharp laugh, small tattoo of a swallow on her wrist. She worked double shifts at Miller's Diner, saving for nursing school. On that Friday night, she was seen leaving work at 11:07 p.m., keys in hand, denim jacket slung over her shoulder. She never made it home. Her car, a pale blue '92 Honda Civic, was found the next morning on the shoulder of County Road 19, driver's door open, one shoe lying in the mud. No struggle marks. No fingerprints that matched anyone in the database. No Claire. The sheriff at the time, a man named Hal Dorsey, called it a missing persons investigation. But the locals called it something else, the Cypress Lake curse. They searched for weeks. Volunteers, dogs, helicopters skimming the tree line. The swamp gave up nothing. The water was too dark, the ground too soft, the air too heavy. When the press left, the story died quietly. But the Hensley family never did. Her mother, Ruth, taped missing posters to every lamppost in 3 counties. Her brother, Mark, patrolled the marsh himself with a flashlight and a shotgun. Over the years, grief turned to silence, silence to rumor, rumor to legend. The waitress who disappeared. The cold case that refused to fade. And then, in 2025, everything broke open again. It started with a storm and a storm drain. County maintenance crews clearing out the old drainage system near Route 19 uncovered a rusted metal box wrapped in plastic and sealed with electrical tape. Inside, a wallet, a Polaroid, and a bracelet engraved with the name Claire. The photo showed a woman tied to a wooden chair in a dark room, her face blurred by light, but the swallow tattoo on her wrist visible and unmistakable. The image was dated August 15, 1999, one day after she vanished. The sheriff's department reopened the investigation within hours. The box had been buried deep, under years of silt, less than 2 miles from where her car was found. The current lead investigator, Detective Elena Ruiz, called it the most significant evidence discovery in this county's history. But as forensic techs analyzed the box, they found something else. Partial prints on the Polaroid's edge. Not Claire's. Not a known offender's. They belonged to Mark Hensley, her brother. When the news broke, Cypress Lake froze. Mark was 52 now, gray hair, quiet man, worked maintenance at the same high school he once attended. To the locals, he was the devoted brother who'd never stopped searching. The idea that he might have been the missing link, the family's ghost, sent shockwaves through every diner, church, and front porch in town. Reporters swarmed his neighborhood. Police cars lined the street. Mark said nothing, refused interviews, refused lawyers. For the first time in 26 years, someone was finally answering questions. Just not the ones anyone expected. Detective Ruiz began piecing together the original case file. Brittle paper, faded photos, missing evidence logs. The '99 investigation had been sloppy, riddled with errors. One entry stood out. A report that Mark had an argument with Claire the night she disappeared. A neighbor had overheard shouting. The note ended abruptly, never followed up. When Ruiz tracked down the neighbor, now 81 and bedridden, the woman's voice trembled as she remembered. They were screaming about money, and something else. He said, "You'll regret this if you tell Mom." Then the door slammed. No one had ever asked her again. The town began to split in two. Those who swore Mark was innocent, a man haunted by his sister's loss, and those who whispered that he'd known more all along. Old friends came forward with fragments of memory. That Mark had burned his clothes that weekend, that he stopped going to church, that he'd sold his truck and left town for 3 months, claiming he needed to clear his head. When Ruiz confronted him, he simply said, "You don't know what you're digging up." DNA analysis came back weeks later. The bracelet, the wallet, even the degraded tape, all carried traces of one person other than Claire. The match was exact. Mark Hensley. The evidence was overwhelming, but the timeline didn't fit. Because Mark had an alibi, a solid one. On the night of Claire's disappearance, he was working a double shift at a construction site 30 miles away. Time cards, coworker statements, pay records all confirmed it. Detective Ruiz stood in her office staring at the files, the contradictions stacked like ghosts on her desk. If Mark was innocent, why were his prints on a Polaroid no one had seen in 26 years? The answer, perhaps, lay in the box itself. Forensic engineers discovered that the film used in the Polaroid had been discontinued in early 2000. The photo had to have been taken before that, meaning it was genuine, not a planted fake. But the material used to seal the box, a specific brand of electrical tape, wasn't sold in Florida until 2004. Someone had reopened the evidence, reburied it years later. Someone who had access to Mark's fingerprints. Ruiz's team began reconstructing the family tree, searching for anyone who could have obtained old items of his. That's when they found him, Daniel Hensley, Mark's estranged son. Born in 1998, 1 year before Claire vanished. He'd left Cypress Lake at 18, joined the army, disappeared off social media, resurfaced in 2024 living under another name in Georgia. The timing was impossible to ignore. The missing link, the one no one had thought to look at, was back on the board. Neighbors remembered Daniel as quiet, intense, always watching. After Claire disappeared, he was raised by his grandmother Ruth, the same woman who kept Claire's belongings in labeled boxes in her attic. Daniel had full access to them after Ruth's death in 2018. And according to phone records, he'd made multiple anonymous calls to the sheriff's tip line in the months before the storm drain discovery, each one claiming to have new information about Claire's killer. The caller's voice was digitally disguised. But when Ruiz compared the recordings to Daniel's military enlistment interview, the cadence matched. The cold case had just found its echo. The investigation deepened, stretching into state archives, federal databases, even the FBI's behavioral unit. They found something chilling. Daniel had been stationed in 3 states between 2012 and 2019, and in each, a woman had gone missing under similar circumstances. Abandoned car, missing shoe, no signs of struggle. None of those cases were ever solved. The press began calling him the heir of silence. Ruiz, careful and deliberate, refused to speculate. "We're not dealing with coincidence," she said. "We're dealing with legacy." But the question that tore through every headline remained. What did Daniel have to do with Claire's disappearance? And why frame his father? The clues pointed toward obsession. Family photos from the late 90s showed Daniel as a toddler, clinging to Claire's arm, staring at her with almost frightened affection. In her diary, recovered from the Hensley home, Claire had written a single cryptic line weeks before vanishing. "He looks at me like he knows something I don't." Ruiz drove out to Georgia to find him. What she discovered was a cabin deep in the woods near Savannah, where Daniel had been living alone. On the walls, photographs of missing women, newspaper clippings, maps with red string connecting each point. And in a locked drawer, a set of Polaroids, aged and curling at the edges, each one showing a different face. All of them scared. None of them identified. In the final drawer, a single photo of Claire, the same image found in the metal box, but this time clearer. Her eyes open, staring at the camera. Behind her, barely visible in the reflection of a mirror, a man's face. Not Daniel. Not Mark. Someone else. The photo lab enhanced the image. The outline was faint but recognizable. Sheriff Hal Dorsey. The same man who'd closed the original investigation in 1999. And with that, the case turned inside out. Ruiz realized she wasn't chasing a killer. She was chasing a chain. One built on protection, guilt, and silence. Dorsey had retired in 2005, moved to Tennessee, died in 2019. But his records showed that he'd been close to the Hensley family. godfather to Daniel, mentor to Mark. It was Dorsey who'd arranged Mark's alibi that night. It was Dorsey who'd signed off on the search perimeter that never included the marsh. It was Dorsey who'd buried the evidence, literally and figuratively. As the truth unraveled, one final detail surfaced. The electrical tape used on the box was traced to a batch distributed exclusively to the county sheriff's department in 2004, during Dorsey's last year in office. He'd sealed the box himself, perhaps to hide his involvement, perhaps to delay discovery until long after his death. But why Daniel unearthed it, why he framed his father, why he carried the legacy forward, that remains the haunting question. When Ruiz returned to Cypress Lake, reporters asked if the case was finally solved. She looked at the camera, her face expressionless, and said, "Solved isn't the same as answered." The town went quiet again. The marsh, the road, the diner, all still there, untouched, watching. Somewhere beneath the cypress trees, the past keeps breathing. Because in Cypress Lake, every secret has roots, and some roots never die. The night after Detective Ruiz's press conference, the town of Cypress Lake didn't sleep. Porch lights burned through the fog, radios whispered theories, and for the first time in decades, the swamp hummed with human voices again. Old men gathered at Miller's diner, speaking in low tones about the sheriff who'd saved them in '99, now revealed as the ghost behind the badge. Mothers pulled their children closer, whispering that evil had been living among them all along. The story hit national news by dawn. Florida cold case cracks after 26 years. Family tied to shocking twist. Reporters called it closure. But Ruiz knew it wasn't. Closure implies peace. And there was nothing peaceful about what she'd found inside that cabin. The walls were still in her mind, the photographs, the red strings, the faces. She saw them when she closed her eyes. Each picture was catalogued, numbered, yet emotionally charged, almost devotional. Daniel hadn't just collected them. He'd curated them. Victims who looked eerily similar. Dark-haired women in their 20s, soft features, all photographed from the same angle. Chin tilted down, eyes up. It wasn't random. It was ritual. And in the center of the collage, pinned higher than the rest, was the photo of Claire. A single candle burned in front of it when they entered. The wax had melted into the shape of a hand. Forensics took everything. Film, maps, journals, even soil samples. They found a hidden compartment under the floorboards containing a wooden box carved with initials, CH, and a note inside. The handwriting was jagged, deliberate. "You left her in the dark. I just brought her home." The implication hit Ruiz like a pulse of static. Whoever wrote it wasn't just preserving Claire's memory. They believed they were continuing something that had already begun. She ordered a full psychological profile on Daniel Hensley. Childhood photos, school records, military evaluations, all painted a portrait of someone detached, intelligent, observant. A boy raised in the shadow of loss, shaped by silence. Teachers described him as withdrawn but precise. He'd never raised his voice, never smiled in photos. In one counseling record from 2006, his therapist had written, "Daniel exhibits recurring dreams involving a woman trapped in water. He calls her the sleeping angel." Ruiz couldn't shake that phrase. The sleeping angel. She visited Mark Hensley in custody the following morning. He sat behind the glass, unshaven, hollow-eyed, his hands trembling not with fear but something like fury barely contained. "He's not like you think," Mark said quietly. "My boy's not a monster." Ruiz leaned in. "Then what is he?" Mark's jaw tightened. "He's the echo of everything we buried." Ruiz pressed further. "Did Sheriff Dorsey know Claire?" Mark's silence stretched too long. Finally, he said, "He was at our house the week before she vanished. Said he was checking on a noise complaint. There was no complaint." He rubbed his forehead. "Claire didn't like him. She said he watched her when she worked the late shift. I told her not to worry. He was the sheriff. You trust the badge, right?" His laugh cracked in half. "That's what I told her." The more Ruiz dug, the deeper the rot went. Dorsey had kept a private locker in the old department basement, long sealed after his retirement. With a warrant and a crowbar, they pried it open. Inside were 3 evidence boxes from unrelated cases, all missing women, all closed as runaways. Each contained personal effects, jewelry, shoes, pieces of clothing, none officially logged. And taped to the inside of the locker door, in yellowing ink, a photograph of Claire Hensley smiling, standing outside Miller's diner. Someone had drawn a faint X over her heart. The discovery broke the case wide for the state. The Department of Justice sent a joint task force. Old files were reopened, transcripts digitized, witnesses re-interviewed. But as the system churned, Cypress Lake itself began to fracture. Conspiracy theories flooded social media. Some said Dorsey had been part of a trafficking ring. Others claimed a secret cult operating in the swamp. Someone even burned down the old sheriff's storage barn, convinced it hid more evidence. Ruiz wasn't interested in rumor. She followed the facts. And the facts pointed her toward something even darker. A pattern buried inside Dorsey's own notes. Every summer from 1986 to 1999, a woman in the Tri-County area had disappeared within 30 days of a police charity event run by Dorsey. The timing was too consistent to ignore. He'd been using his position as cover, coordinating search teams, controlling the investigation from the inside. Claire had simply been the last. But the question that haunted Ruiz was why Daniel picked up the torch. Back at the Georgia crime scene, Tex uncovered an old VHS camcorder hidden behind a false wall. Inside, one tape labeled in black marker, Angel 99. Ruiz hesitated before pressing play. Static filled the screen, then a flicker. A woman tied to a chair, breathing heavily, crying out for someone off camera. Her voice barely audible. "Please, Mark, help me." The angle shifted, revealing a man's shadow moving closer. But it wasn't Mark. The posture, the uniform, unmistakable. Sheriff Dorsey. The timestamp read August 15, 1999. The same date on the Polaroid. Ruiz felt her throat tighten. The tape confirmed everything. Dorsey had kidnapped Claire. But then came the twist that hollowed her stomach. At the end of the tape, a child's voice. Faint, high-pitched, whispering, "Don't cry, Aunt Claire." Daniel, barely a year old. His mother's voice, off-screen, said, "He likes watching you." Then the screen went black. The tape wasn't just evidence of murder. It was the origin of a psyche fractured before it ever understood what it saw. Daniel had grown up with the echo of that moment, possibly even with the recording itself. He'd inherited Dorsey's obsession, not through teaching, but through trauma. Ruiz realized she wasn't chasing a copycat. She was chasing a ghost imprinted on bloodline. News of the tape leaked, feeding the media frenzy. National networks dubbed it the sheriff's secret film. Protesters gathered outside the police station demanding a full purge of old case files. The governor promised an independent inquiry. For Cypress Lake, it was a reckoning. Every unsolved disappearance in the region suddenly felt alive again. But beneath the noise, Ruiz kept returning to that one line in the note. "You left her in the dark. I just brought her home." What if Daniel hadn't killed anyone? What if his twisted pilgrimage was an attempt to expose what Dorsey had done? The evidence from the cabin, the clippings, the maps, the identical victims, might not have been trophies. They could have been warnings. Ruiz ordered forensic linguistics on the note. The phrasing matched none of Daniel's writing samples. The syntax was older, patterned, formal. But one sample did align perfectly, Hal Dorsey's old field reports, which meant one terrifying possibility. Someone had planted the box even after Dorsey's death. When they exhumed his body, they found traces of fresh soil on the coffin lid. The grave had been disturbed within the last year. Someone had been there. Someone still loyal. Through DMV records, Ruiz identified one last name connected to both Dorsey and Daniel. Lydia Voss, a retired deputy who'd served under Dorsey for 15 years. She'd vanished from public life in 2019, the same year Dorsey died. Her last known address was an abandoned trailer on Route 17, deep inside the pine forest. The property records listed Daniel Hensley as a secondary contact. The team went in at dawn. The air was heavy, thick with humidity and dread. The trailer door creaked open with a metallic whine. Inside, dust, decay, the smell of copper. On the table, a box identical to the one from the storm drain. Taped shut, labeled in smeared ink, Angel 26. Ruiz's hands shook as she peeled back the tape. Inside were printed photographs of every investigator involved in the reopened case, including her own. Someone had been watching. Someone still was. Outside, a sound echoed, the crunch of gravel. Ruiz turned. A figure stood by the tree line, half-shadowed, face hidden beneath a hood. She shouted for them to stop. The figure bolted. Deputies gave chase, but the woods swallowed him whole. When they returned, Ruiz found a single Polaroid pinned to her car windshield. It showed the cabin, empty now, with the words scrawled across the bottom, "You're next to bring her home." That night, Ruiz sat alone in her motel room, replaying every frame of the vicious in her mind. The patterns, the phrases, the silence between breaths. What if the box hadn't been meant to frame Mark or incriminate Daniel, but to pull her, the detective, into the same spiral? What if the real motive was continuation, not confession? In her report, she wrote, "This case no longer behaves like history. It behaves like contagion." Outside, rain began to fall over Cypress Lake, steady and relentless. Streetlights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and cut out mid-howl. And in the swamp, that endless, breathing dark, the cypress roots shifted as if something beneath them was trying to rise. The past wasn't buried. It was waiting, and the missing weren't gone. They were listening. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. By the time the clouds lifted, Cypress Lake looked like a ghost town drowned in gray. Roads shimmered under standing water, the diner was closed, and the marsh had swollen, swallowing the wooden trail markers used by search teams years ago. Detective Ruiz stood on the balcony of the station, coffee untouched, watching the storm's aftermath spread across the horizon. Somewhere out there, in that endless wet wilderness, someone had buried truth, and it was still breathing. The Polaroid left on her windshield wouldn't leave her mind. The handwriting was the same jagged style found on the earlier note, deliberate, almost carved into the paper. But there was a new element this time. Under the message, faintly visible in the reflection, a face behind the camera. Male, mid-40s, smiling. The forensic lab enhanced the image, but it wasn't Daniel. It wasn't Dorsey. The algorithm returned no matches in any database. A stranger in a sea of familiar ghosts. Ruiz began to wonder if they'd been chasing the wrong bloodline all along. Maybe Dorsey wasn't the source. Maybe he was the vessel. A carrier for something older, darker, passed through stories and silence. In every interview, locals described the same legend. The marsh light. A figure seen in the swamp on stormy nights, carrying a lantern, leading lost souls away from town. "It's just a story," Ruiz had said once. But now she wasn't so sure. Because every documented disappearance, every one linked to Dorsey, happened during a storm. She pulled up weather archives from 1986 to 1999. 12 missing women. 11 storms. Each within 24 hours of the vanishings. Patterns layered on patterns. Coincidence, maybe, or choreography. She printed the map and pinned it to her wall. The storm dates formed a spiral, all centering on one place. Hollow Point Marsh, a restricted wetland 3 miles north of town. The same area Dorsey had declared off-limits during every search. That night, Ruiz assembled a small team, no press, no department chatter. Just 2 trusted officers and a forensic tech. They drove out before dawn, headlights cutting through the mist. The road ended where the marsh began, the air heavy with the smell of algae and decay. They hiked in silence, flashlights trembling in their hands, the ground sucking at their boots. After an hour, they reached it. A half-collapsed wooden structure rising from the water like a drowned house. The boards bore the faint shape of a badge, carved into the wall. Dorsey's mark. Inside, time had stopped. Mold-covered furniture. Broken chains hanging from the rafters. A camera tripod rusted into the floor. And on the far wall, written in black paint that hadn't yet faded, She never left. The forensic tech's voice cracked. This place wasn't abandoned. It was sealed. Ruiz swept her light across the corner. There, half buried in silt, was a metal chest. The lock had been snapped. Inside, waterlogged files, Polaroids, and a single badge. Sheriff Hal Dorsey's. But what stopped Ruiz cold wasn't the evidence. It was the smell. Sweet, metallic, recent. The kind that didn't belong to decades-old decay. She turned. Something floated near the wall, a tarp, tangled in rope. When they pulled it up, a shape surfaced beneath the waterline. Human, female, long hair coiled around the neck like seaweed. Her face was pale, almost waxy, but intact. The coroner would later confirm she'd been dead less than 72 hours. The badge number in her hand belonged to one of Ruiz's deputies, the same one who'd chased the figure in the woods days earlier. The media exploded before dawn broke. Detectives' own deputy found dead in Cold Case Swamp. The narrative turned inward, suspicion of corruption, whispers that Ruiz had lost control. The department swarmed with state investigators. They wanted order. They wanted closure. But Ruiz couldn't stop thinking about the message. You're next to bring her home. Maybe it hadn't been a threat. Maybe it was an invitation. The autopsy report confirmed the victim, Deputy Laura Greer, age 31, had been strangled with a material matching the old electrical tape used in the original case. Her fingerprints were found on none of the recovered items. But under her fingernails, technicians found traces of synthetic fibers from a uniform, a sheriff's uniform. Ruiz stared at the lab results, her chest tightening. The county sheriff's uniforms hadn't changed fabric since 1998. That meant whoever killed Greer had been wearing one. She ordered the storage inventory of all historical uniforms from the evidence archive. One was missing, checked out in 2019, signed by authorized personnel. The signature, Lydia Voss. The trail circled back. They traced her credit card activity, dormant for 6 years until 3 months ago. A fuel purchase outside Jacksonville. 2 hotel stays under aliases. And then nothing. The trail ended near Hollow Point, right where the body had been found. Ruiz replayed every step of the investigation, every name, every date. She saw the pattern forming again. Not random, cyclical. The case wasn't just haunting the town. It was repeating itself. She returned to the cabin in Georgia one last time. The police tape fluttered in the wind, the air thick with mildew and quiet. On the wall where the photographs had hung, faint outlines remained, ghosts of frames removed. Someone had been back. The only new addition was a small, handwritten note stuck to the door with a knife. You followed her path. Now follow her voice. Inside the note, a cassette tape, old, unmarked. Ruiz didn't trust digital playback. She found an analog player, pressed play, and let the hiss fill the room. Then a voice, soft, trembling, familiar. If you're hearing this, it said. Then he found me again. A pause. This isn't about Claire. It never was. He's looking for the one who remembers. The voice wasn't Claire's. It wasn't Lydia's. It was Ruth Hensley, the mother, dead since 2018.
Ruiz froze.
The date on the tape's label read March 2024.
Impossible.
Forensics later verified the voice print. Genuine. No digital manipulation. The recording had been made less than a year ago. So who had recorded it? And what did the one who remembers mean? Ruiz scoured Ruth's old property records. After her death, her home had been cleared, sold, forgotten. But a single item in probate stood out. A storage unit rented in her name, never claimed. Ruiz drove there herself. Inside the dim space. Old furniture, boxes of Claire's belongings, and a trunk marked, personal. Do not open. She opened it anyway. Inside were hundreds of Polaroids. Not of victims, not of strangers. Of Daniel, every birthday, every school play, every milestone. Photographed from the same angle, same composition, same flash lighting. The images were obsessive, clinical. And in the corner of each, a reflection in a mirror or window, always the same figure. Sheriff Dorsey. Watching. Ruth had known. The final envelope in the trunk contained a single sheet of paper. On it, a list of dates and locations, matching every disappearance from 1986 onward. At the bottom, written in shaky pen, "He made me remember so I couldn't tell. Now it's your turn." Ruiz sat in the darkness of the storage unit, rain tapping the roof like fingertips. She realized the truth wasn't linear, it was recursive. Dorsey had manipulated everyone. Claire, Mark, Ruth, Daniel. Each generation repeating the trauma of the one before. The missing link wasn't a suspect. It was the cycle itself. Back at headquarters, the power flickered. The evidence room alarm tripped. When Ruiz arrived, the door was open. The Polaroids recovered from the marsh, gone. Security footage showed a shadow entering the room at 2:13 a.m. No face, no ID, just a uniform. Sheriff's badge glinting once in the camera's flash before cutting out. The chief demanded Ruiz step down. "You're too close," he said, but she couldn't. Not when every thread was tightening around her own name. She reviewed the photos of the cabin wall again, every face, every victim. And there, hidden in the collage, one image she hadn't noticed before. A blurry shot of herself, taken months earlier, outside the diner where she'd first interviewed Mark Hensley. The caption scrawled beneath, "Homecoming." For the first time, Ruiz felt the fear that her victims must have felt. Not of death, but of being seen. Known. Watched by something that wasn't finished yet. The next morning, a package arrived at the station. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid. A woman standing knee-deep in water, hands tied, mouth taped. Behind her, a lantern floating just above the surface, light flickering. On the back of the photo, in red ink, "The Marsh Remembers." Ruiz stared at it until her eyes blurred. She understood now. The case hadn't come back to life. It had never died. And somewhere out in that drowned wilderness, beneath the cypress and the fog, someone or something was still waiting for her to follow. The photograph felt warm in Ruiz's hands, like it had been printed moments ago and rushed straight through the rain to her desk. Like someone out there was watching the station doors and timing her heartbeat, and the longer she stared, the louder the silence became, because the woman in the picture wasn't a stranger pulled from a database. She was local. The kind of face you'd pass at a gas station without noticing, freckles, damp hair stuck to her cheek, wrists bound so tight the skin bulged. Around the cord and behind her that lantern hovering above the water like a second moon, a marsh light made real, a signal, a signature, a threat disguised as a legend, and the ink on the back, "The Marsh Remembers," wasn't a message meant for the public, it was meant for her, specifically her, because right under the words, barely visible where the pen had pressed too hard, there was an indentation, a second line, a ghost line, a code you only noticed when you held it at an angle, and Ruiz turned. It slowly beneath the fluorescent glare until the letters rose up. County RD 19, mile 7.3, 213. The same time stamp as the evidence room breach, the same number that had been haunting the security logs like a fingerprint made of darkness. And suddenly the case wasn't just infected, it was synchronized, every piece moving to the same beat. She didn't call it in. Not yet. Not to the chief, not to the task force. Not to anyone whose voice could be recorded, replayed, mimicked. She went to the one person left in the building who still looked her in the eye without flinching. The forensic tech, Nolan Price, the man who'd stepped into Hollow Point Marsh and said the place wasn't abandoned. It was sealed. She laid the Polaroid on his table. "Tell me that's not fresh," she said. Price didn't answer right away. He took a loop, he traced the edges, he sniffed the surface like a sommelier tasting poison. "It's fresh," he said finally, voice flat. "Same batch chemistry as the cabin Polaroids. Same developer artifacts. Whoever has this camera has film. And whoever has film has access to old stock." His eyes lifted, sharp now. "Where do you think they're getting it?" Ruiz thought of the evidence boxes in Dorsey's locker, the charity events, the storms, the spiral on her wall that led to Hollow Point like a noose tightening around the town. Old stock doesn't appear by accident. Old stock gets hoarded. Old stock gets preserved like relics. "Sheriff's supply," she said. Or someone who cleaned out the sheriff's supply. She saw Lydia Voss in her mind. Retired deputy, vanished, signature on the missing uniform, her abandoned trailer with the second box, the photos of investigators, Ruiz's own face on paper like a target. "And if it's Lydia," Ruiz said, "then she's not alone." They pulled traffic cam archives. County Road 19 was mostly empty, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through pines and marsh grass. But at 2:07 a.m. a vehicle passed mile 7.3, an older SUV, dark, roof rack, no plate visible. At 2:19, the same silhouette passed again, headed the opposite direction, and in the passenger window a flicker of light bounced like a lantern flame. Ruiz's skin tightened. The signal wasn't supernatural. It was human. It was deliberate. The woman in the photo had to be identified before the trail went cold again. Ruiz sent Price to run a facial recognition sweep through DMV databases, quietly off-network, through a state terminal he'd kept for emergencies. It took 12 minutes to get a hit, and when it came back Price didn't speak, he just turned the screen toward her. The name on the file was Hannah Keene, 26, substitute teacher at Cypress Lake Middle School. Last seen leaving a teacher's supply store in Jacksonville 2 days earlier. Reported missing by a roommate who said Hannah never missed her Friday call with her mother. Ruiz knew the mother's voice already. She'd heard it in the lobby once, years ago, when a different family begged the department to keep looking. She stared at Hannah's ID photo and saw the same tired kindness, the same unaware proximity to a storm. Ruiz grabbed her jacket, her keys, her radio, then stopped, hand hovering over the radio as if it might bite. She left it behind. If someone inside the department was wearing a uniform and moving like they owned the hallways, a radio wasn't safety. It was a leash. She took only a flashlight, a sidearm, and the Polaroid, because if she was walking into a trap, she wanted to carry the bait like a mirror. She drove alone, headlights chewing through wet darkness. Cypress Lake fell away behind her, the diner's neon sign flickering like a dying pulse. Houses tucked into black tree lines, and the farther she went the more the road felt like it was funneling her into something older than pavement, something that remembered boots and blood and the sound of radios cutting out mid-howl. Mile markers ticked down. 6.9, 7.1, 7.3. She slowed until her tires barely whispered. There was a turnout there, half hidden behind sawgrass, a narrow dirt track leading into the trees. No official signage. No tape. Just the faintest impression of recent tire grooves pressed into mud like a fresh scar. Ruiz killed the engine. The night swallowed the sound. Then she heard it, soft, rhythmic, a drip somewhere deep in the brush, and beneath it another noise that raised the hairs on her arms. A low humming, almost like someone singing without words. She stepped into the track, flashlight off. The darkness was thick enough to taste. Every few steps she stopped, listened, let her eyes adjust. The humming continued, distant, steady, guiding. It made the swamp feel like a room and she was walking toward the center. Then the smell hit her. Stagnant water and something coppery and warm. Something not supposed to be out here. She turned on the light. The beam caught a scrap of cloth tied to a branch. Sheriff's uniform fabric, torn, wet, swinging like a flag. Beneath it, footprints in the mud. More than one set. Some heavy, some light, and one set that looked like it dragged between steps, a heel carving a line like a plea. The track opened into a clearing. The marsh began there, water glinting under moonlight, cypress knees rising like knuckles. And on the water, floating inches above the surface, was the lantern. Rayol metal, glass smudged, flame trembling inside as if it had lungs. For a moment Ruiz couldn't move. The sight was too perfect, too staged, like a scene built for a camera that wasn't there but was watching anyway. Then she saw the boat. A flat-bottomed skiff tucked into reeds, rope tied off to a half-submerged stump. Fresh rope, fresh knots. A whisper cut through the air, close enough to raise ice across her spine. Detective. Ruiz spun, gun raised. The flashlight beam caught a figure stepping out from behind a tree. Not masked, not hooded. A woman in her 60s with sharp cheekbones and a face that had once been official, authoritative. The kind of face that told citizens to calm down while hiding storms behind the eyes. Lydia Voss. She wore an old sheriff's jacket, too big now, sleeves rolled, badge pinned like it still meant something. In her hand was a second lantern, unlit. In the other, a small camera Polaroid, strap wrapped around her wrist. "You shouldn't be alone out here," Lydia said, voice smooth, almost maternal. "But you always were, even in the station." Ruiz kept the gun trained. "Where is Hannah Keene?" Lydia smiled faintly. "Always the same first question. You don't ask why. You don't ask who taught you to hunt. You just ask where the body is." She took a step closer. Ruiz's beam lit the camera, the film pack. It was real. "You've been following Hal's footprints," Lydia said. "He'd be proud." "Hal Dorsey is dead," Ruiz snapped. "And so is your protection." Lydia's smile didn't move. "Dead men don't stop owning towns," she said. "They just stop needing to hide." She gestured with her chin toward the marsh. "She's close. Close enough to hear you if you say her name." Ruiz's throat tightened. "You killed my deputy." Lydia's eyes flickered. Something cold passed over them. "Laura Greer put her hands where Hal told her not to," Lydia said. "Curiosity is a beautiful thing, detective, until it becomes a disease." She tilted her head. "You feel it too, don't you? That itch. That need to see the end. That's the same itch that made Hal build his little chapel out here." Ruiz's mind flashed to the structure in Hollow Point, the chains, the tripod, the words on the wall. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Why now?" Lydia raised the unlit lantern like an offering. "Because you reopened the door," she said. "And because Daniel came home." The name landed like a stone in water. "Where is he?" Ruiz asked. Lydia's gaze slid past Ruiz, toward the lantern on the water. "He's always been closer than you think," she said softly. "You keep calling him the missing link like he's a person. He's not. He's a hinge. A turning point." Ruiz stepped forward, careful. "You framed Mark." Lydia's laughter was quiet, almost sad. "Mark framed himself," she said. "Men like Mark live their whole lives begging for punishment because guilt feels like love when grief is the only language left." Her eyes sharpened. "But Daniel is different." "What did you do to him?" Ruiz said. Lydia's smile thinned. "We didn't do anything," she said. "We showed him truth. Hal believed truth was a flame. If you can control the flame, you can control what people see." She lifted the lantern again, tapping the glass. "That's why he liked storms. Storms make people look where you point." The air changed. The humming returned, closer now, no longer distant. Ruiz turned her head slightly, trying to locate it. And that's when she heard a muffled sound across the water. Soft, desperate, human. A whimper. "Hannah." Ruiz moved toward the boat. Lydia's voice followed her like fog. "Go ahead," Lydia said. "Bring her home." Ruiz hesitated just long enough to see it. A thin wire stretched low across the ground near the skiff, almost invisible, anchored to a stake. Tripwire. A trap meant for a rushing hero. Ruiz stepped over it slowly, deliberately, eyes locked on Lydia. "You wanted me out here," Ruiz said. "You wanted me alone." Lydia's face didn't change. "Alone is where you listen," she said. "And listening is where you learn." Ruiz climbed into the skiff, pushed off with the pole. The water accepted her, cold, thick. The lantern floated ahead, guiding her deeper between cypress trunks. The whimpering grew louder, then faded, then returned, like it was being carried away by hands or by current. Ruiz's flashlight beam skimmed the surface and caught something pale under the water, a reflection or a face or a bone, then vanished in ripples. Her heart hammered. The marsh felt alive, not with magic, but with intention. She rounded a bend and the water opened into a wider pocket. There, tied to a post half-submerged, was Hannah Keene. Alive, barely, mouth taped, wrists bound, shoulders shaking. Her eyes locked onto Ruiz's and widened with a terror so pure it looked like recognition. Like she'd been waiting not for rescue but for the next person in the chain. Ruiz reached for the knot, then froze. The rope wasn't tied to the post. It was tied to something beneath the water. Something heavy. Something that shifted when she touched it. A click sounded behind her. Not a twig. Not a frog. A camera shutter. Ruiz spun in the skiff and saw, standing on a narrow plank walkway hidden in the reeds, a man holding a lantern high, face half-lit, half-shadow, smiling the same smile from the enhanced reflection, and in his other hand the Polaroid camera, ready for another shot, and even before Ruiz could process the shape of him, the familiarity of his posture, the way he carried authority like a scent, she heard Lydia's voice from somewhere behind, calm as scripture. "Now," Lydia said. "The marsh remembers you too." The flash seared the night like lightning, freezing everything in a split-second tableau. Ruiz in the skiff, one hand on her weapon, Hannah bound beside the post, and the man on the plank smiling with a calm that didn't belong in any human face. The camera spat the photo out with a soft mechanical sigh. Then the flame in his lantern trembled and the world moved again. Ruiz steadied her aim. "Put it down," she shouted. The man didn't flinch. He spoke softly, like someone greeting an old friend. "Detective Ruiz," he said. "You finally made it home." His voice carried the calm weight of authority. Measured, deliberate, practiced. He took one slow step forward, light glinting on his badge. A badge that shouldn't exist. The county had retired that style 20 years ago. "Who are you?" Ruiz demanded. The smile widened. "You already know. They've been writing my name on every file you touch." She looked closer, and the recognition hit like ice in her lungs. The jawline, the posture, the eyes, gray, watchful. Familiar from every old photograph she'd studied. Sheriff Hal Dorsey. But it couldn't be. Dorsey was dead, buried. Autopsy confirmed. She'd seen the exhumation report herself. Ruiz whispered, "You're not him." The man tilted his head, almost tenderly. "Names are only anchors, detective. What matters is who remembers." He lowered the camera and set it gently on the railing, fingers careful, reverent. "Hal built something out here," he said. "Something bigger than a badge. Lydia carried it. Daniel fed it. You're meant to finish it." "Where's Hannah?" Ruiz asked again. "She's what you came for," he said. "You just don't understand why yet." Behind him, Lydia stepped out of the shadows, her lantern finally lit. The two flames swayed in rhythm, casting twin circles that met in the middle of the swamp. Between them, the air looked thicker, as if heat itself were watching. "She doesn't see it yet," Lydia murmured. "She will," the man said. "They always do, right before the water takes the light." Ruiz fired. The shot split the air, echo bouncing across the trees. The figure jerked backward, stumbled, fell off the plank and into the marsh with a splash that swallowed everything. The lantern toppled after him, flame hissing out. Darkness returned like a scream cut short. Lydia shouted his name. Not Hal, not Daniel, something else Ruiz didn't catch, and lunged forward, but Ruiz was faster. The detective vaulted from the skiff, tackled Lydia to the ground, wrestled the Polaroid camera from her hand. It clicked once during the struggle, capturing nothing but blurred motion and light. "Where is he?" Ruiz shouted. Lydia's breath rattled in her throat. "You think you stopped him?" she hissed. "He's older than any of us. He wears us like uniforms." Ruiz shoved her against the mud. "Who?" "The one who remembers," Lydia gasped. "The marsh keeps his shape. Hal only gave it a name." The words made no sense, but something in Lydia's eyes, a kind of distant ecstasy, made Ruiz's stomach turn. She left the woman pinned, turned back toward the post. Hannah was gone. Rope cut. Only the faintest ripple moved across the surface where she'd been. Ruiz spun her flashlight frantically across the water, shouting Hannah's name until her throat tore. Nothing. By the time backup arrived, summoned by Price, who'd traced her car's GPS signal, the clearing was empty. No body, no man, no Hannah. Only Lydia, half-conscious and smiling through broken teeth. They brought floodlights, divers, drones. They found the skiff, the rope, the shell casing. But the marsh yielded nothing else. Not that night, not the next morning. The official report would later call it a failed extraction and a likely drowning. But Ruiz knew better. The marsh hadn't taken Hannah. Someone had taken her through it. Lydia Voss was hospitalized under constant guard. She spoke in fragments, psalms mixed with case numbers, coordinates that led nowhere, and one phrase she repeated like a lullaby, "He'll use her voice next." Ruiz stayed by the interrogation window for hours, watching Lydia's lips move, recording every syllable. When she finally entered the room, Lydia's smile returned like recognition. "Do you hear it yet?" Lydia asked. Ruiz said nothing. "The water hums when it chooses someone new," Lydia said. "Hal heard it first, then Ruth, then Daniel. You will too." Ruiz leaned in close. "I'm nothing like you." Lydia's eyes glowed with something between pity and delight. "That's what we all said." The next morning, Lydia was dead. Cardiac arrest. No struggle, no sign of tampering. The security footage showed her sitting up in bed at 2:13 a.m., that cursed time, looking directly at the corner camera and whispering something before she stopped breathing. When text enhanced the audio, they caught two words: "She's here." Ruiz didn't sleep for 48 hours. She sat in the evidence room with every remaining photograph spread across the floor, tracing lines with string, searching for an anchor. Dorsey's handwriting, Lydia's loops, Daniel's scribbles, Ruth's notes, they all shared one habit: a mark in the corner of each page. Small, precise, shaped like a spiral of water draining. The same spiral Ruiz had drawn on her map weeks ago without realizing why. She dug through the department archives until she found the oldest photo of Cypress Lake. An aerial survey from 1948, before the highway, before the town spread out. There it was. A natural depression in the marsh forming a perfect spiral pattern, leading to a sinkhole once marked as Hollow Point. The town hadn't been built near the marsh by accident. It had been built around it. Price found her still staring at the map at dawn. He set a coffee on the desk. "You look like you're planning to go back out there," he said. "I am." He shook his head. "Ruiz, this isn't investigation anymore. It's obsession." She looked up, eyes hollow but steady. "That's what they said about Ruth." Price exhaled. "At least take someone with you." "I can't. Not again." He started to argue, but then something on the map caught his eye. "Wait, that storm you plotted, the one that lined up with Claire's disappearance. Another system's moving in tonight. Same pressure pattern. Almost identical." The words felt like prophecy. The pattern wanted to close its circle. By nightfall, thunder crawled over the horizon. Ruiz parked near the edge of the highway, rain slicing across her windshield, the wipers beating in sync with her pulse. She checked her gear. Flashlight, recorder, spare rounds, waterproof case for the Polaroid camera she'd taken from Lydia. She wasn't sure why she'd brought it. Maybe because it felt like the only thing that could see what human eyes couldn't. She stepped out into the storm. Water rose over her boots instantly. The world was a palette of black and lightning. Every flash revealed the trees bending, the marsh swelling like a chest inhaling. Ruiz followed the path by memory, past the turnout through the track to the clearing. It was waiting. The lantern was back, burning steady on the water. The skiff floated beside it, untied. The rope that had bound Hannah now hung from the post, cut clean and tied again in a perfect sailor's knot. Ruiz raised the camera and snapped a shot. The flash bounced off the rain, bright as a scream. When the photo developed, her hands trembled. The image showed the clearing exactly as it was, except for one detail. She wasn't in it. Something moved behind her. A splash, faint but deliberate. She spun, light slicing the rain. A shape moved between the trees, a figure in uniform. Male. Badge glinting. "Price?" she shouted. No answer. She took a step closer, heart pounding, light trembling. The figure turned slightly, revealing the left side of his face. For an instant she saw both time and decay. A younger Dorsey beneath the older shell, eyes bright with borrowed memory. Then he spoke, voice clear through the storm. "Do you hear it now?" The humming returned, louder, vibrating through the ground, through her ribs. Ruiz fell to her knees, hands pressed to her ears. But it was inside her, not around her. A resonance. Words hidden inside the sound. Remember, remember, remember. The water at her feet rippled in concentric rings, pulling toward the spiral's center. She looked up. The figure was gone. Only the lantern remained, drifting slowly toward the middle of the marsh as if dragged by invisible hands. Ruiz stumbled forward, every instinct screaming to stop, but something deeper, a compulsion older than logic, pulled her onward. She waded in. The water climbed her legs, her waist, her chest. The current wrapped around her like breath. She grabbed the lantern. The flame didn't die. It flared. Voices rose inside the light. Claire's, Ruth's, Lydia's, overlapping, pleading, singing. Bring her home. Bring her home. Ruiz lifted the lantern higher. Beneath the surface, shapes moved. Faces, dozens, hundreds, women frozen in the reflection of years, all watching her. And then one face surfaced inches below her, the face of Hannah Keene, eyes open, lips moving soundlessly. Ruiz reached down. Cold fingers grasped hers. Lightning struck the water. The world went white. When consciousness returned, Ruiz was lying on the bank, soaked, trembling, dawn breaking gray over the horizon. The lantern sat beside her, extinguished but intact. The Polaroid camera floated near the reeds. She grabbed it, pulled out the developed photo still inside. The image was impossible. Her standing in the marsh, holding the lantern, behind her a crowd of blurred silhouettes, and one line scrawled across the bottom in black ink she hadn't written. Welcome home, detective. She turned toward the water. The spiral was gone. The surface was smooth. The marsh was silent. And for the first time since the case reopened, Cypress Lake slept without thunder. The air the next morning felt wrong, too still for Florida. The kind of stillness that comes after something has decided to stay. Ruiz sat in her car with the engine off, the Polaroid between her fingers. The image refused to fade. She tried everything. Heat, light, chemicals. But the ink held strong. The words welcome home, detective glaring back like a reflection that wouldn't blink. She hadn't told anyone what really happened that night. The report she filed was clinical. Weather interference, lightning strike, equipment damage. No additional findings. But her eyes hadn't stopped twitching since she wrote it, as though the storm had lodged behind them. She hadn't dreamed in days. When she finally did, she dreamed of water. Not drowning, listening. A hum beneath the surface, rhythmic, patient, like breathing slowed to the tempo of tides. Sometimes, when she woke, she thought she could still hear it leaking from the drains, whispering under the floor. Her phone vibrated. A known number. She answered on instinct. Detective Ruiz? The voice was male, steady, emotionless. We need to talk about the photograph. Who is this? You left something at Hollow Point, the voice said. The marsh doesn't like being ignored. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, pulse quickening. Then, from the passenger seat, the Polaroid shifted. No wind, no touch, just movement, sliding across the dashboard until it stopped at her lap. Static popped in her ears. Ruiz threw open the door, stepped out into the heat. The air buzzed, alive with insects and something else, something electrical. She looked back toward the horizon where the marsh lay, invisible behind miles of pine and mist, and knew she'd have to go back. But not yet. Price was waiting for her at the station, bleary-eyed, tie crooked. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. Maybe I did. He frowned. We've got something from the forensics lab. The water samples from your clothes. He held out a sealed envelope. They're not consistent with surface runoff. Whatever you fell into wasn't just swamp water. It's full of preservation agents, formalin, heavy mineral salts. The kind they use in morgues. Ruiz felt her stomach turn. You're saying that water was treated? Someone's been keeping things in there, Price said. Bodies, samples. Whatever Dorsey was doing, it wasn't random disposal. He hesitated, then added, we also found traces of a polymer in the lantern glass. industrial grade. Same composition used in the old sheriff's department evidence lockers. The room seemed to shrink. He built it, Ruiz said. He built his own morgue out there. Price nodded. And we think it's still operational. That night, they went back. Not officially, not as law enforcement, but as two people who had already lost too much sleep to care about rules. Price drove. The storm clouds had thinned, but the air still pulsed with humidity thick enough to taste. Ruiz brought the lantern. She'd been afraid to touch it, afraid it might spark or whisper. But when she lifted it from her trunk, it felt ordinary cold. The drive out to Hollow Point was silent except for the hum of tires. The highway stretched ahead like a scar. Halfway there, Price said, "You ever think this case doesn't want to be solved?" Ruiz stared out the window. "Cases don't want anything," she said. "People do." He didn't argue. They parked at the same turnout. The path was still there, the grass pressed down as though it had been walked recently. But this time the marsh didn't feel hostile. Felt awake. Half a mile in, Price stopped. "Hear that?" At first, Ruiz thought it was rain, but there was no rain. Just that same low humming again, deeper now, resonating through the ground. She followed it with the lantern's beam until she saw what was making the sound. A generator, half submerged, still running. Its cables snaked into the water, leading to a new structure she hadn't seen before. A shipping container, rusted, tilted slightly on its side, door welded shut. Price crouched, running a hand along the metal. "This hasn't been here long. Can you open it?" He shook his head. "Weld's fresh. Whoever sealed it did it recently." He shone his light on the mud. Fresh footprints, boot prints, one set smaller than the other, both leading back toward the trees. Ruiz's pulse quickened. "We're not alone." They followed the prints, flashlights slicing through the darkness. 10 minutes in, they reached a small clearing littered with debris, plastic sheets, ropes, old photo paper. In the center stood a folding table, on it a Polaroid camera, identical to Lydia's, with a fresh stack of film beside it. And pinned to a tree behind the table, nailed through the center, was a photograph of Hannah Keene. She was alive in the picture, smiling, standing by a car, daylight on her face. Across the bottom, written in red marker, "Don't save her. Remember her." Price muttered a curse. "What the hell does that mean?" Ruiz didn't answer. She reached for the film, but before she could touch it, the camera clicked on its own. Flash firing into the dark. Both of them jumped back. The picture ejected, curling, damp from the humidity. Ruiz snatched it midair. The image showed the same clearing, but now there were two people in it. Herself and Price, frozen, staring at the table. Price stepped back. "It took the photo while we were standing here." Ruiz flipped the image over. The back was blank, except for a faint indentation. Letters pressed but not inked, like someone had written on the photo above it. She held it under the lantern light and read the outline. County RD 19. 213. Always the same coordinates. The same time. She grabbed the film stack and shoved it into her bag. "We're leaving." They turned to go, but the path behind them was gone. The trees had shifted, leaning inward, roots exposed, creating a new corridor that didn't exist before. The humming grew louder, warping into something that almost resembled words. "Don't panic," Price said, though his voice cracked halfway through. Ruiz led the way, forcing herself to breathe evenly. Left toward the road. "Just keep moving." They walked for what felt like hours. The air thickened. The flashlight beams bent, refracting off mist. When they finally broke through the tree line, Ruiz realized they weren't where they started. The car was gone. The turnout was gone. Instead, they stood in front of the old sheriff's substation, abandoned since 2005. Its sign half buried in weeds. "Impossible," Price whispered. "We were miles from here." Ruiz's stomach dropped. On the door, someone had nailed another Polaroid. This one showed the substation exactly as they were seeing it now, but with two figures standing in the doorway. One of them was Price. The other was her. And the caption read, "Welcome back." They didn't go inside. They couldn't. Something about the place felt wrong, like it was breathing. Ruiz took the photo down, tucked it into her coat, and said, "We're done for tonight." Back at headquarters, Ruiz uploaded the GPS data from their phones. The map showed something impossible. Between 2 o'clock and 2:20 a.m., both devices had pinged simultaneously in 2 locations, Hollow Point and the substation. Split presence. Duplicate signals. Price stared at the screen, pale. "How is that even?" "Don't finish," Ruiz said. She went home as dawn broke, exhausted but unable to sleep. She left the lantern by her bed. The humming started again at exactly 2:13 that afternoon, barely audible, like a heartbeat under the floorboards. She followed it to her bathroom sink. The drain vibrated, a faint metallic pulse.
Ruiz leaned closer.
A drop of water rose up against gravity and splashed her cheek. She jerked back, heart hammering. That night, she tried burning the Polaroids. They wouldn't catch. The paper browned but refused to curl, as if moisture seeped from inside. She threw them into the trash, but by morning they were back on her table, dry, neat, stacked. On top of the pile, a new one she hadn't taken, her asleep in bed. The caption, "Remember her." For the first time, Ruiz considered the possibility that the marsh hadn't chosen her to end the story, but to continue it. The knock on her door came at dawn. Soft, polite. She looked through the peephole. A man stood there, dripping wet, wearing a sheriff's uniform from another century, badge gleaming gold. His face calm, patient. He smiled. "Detective," he said through the door. "You left something in the water." Ruiz didn't move. "Open up," he said gently. "The marsh remembers its own." Lightning flashed outside. For an instant, his reflection filled the peephole. Familiar, ancient, endless. And then the knocking stopped. When she finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only a single Polaroid lay on the floor. The image showed her door from the other side. Caption written in neat block letters. "See you at 2:13. The clock hit 2:13 a.m. and stopped. Not slowed, stopped. The red digits froze mid-glow, and the hum that had lived in Ruiz's walls for weeks rose in pitch until it sounded like something exhaling from beneath her floorboards. The Polaroid lay face down on her nightstand. She didn't touch it. She already knew what it said. Her phone screen lit up with no ringtone, no notification, just a single word pulsing at the center. "Remember." She whispered to no one, "I do." The lights flickered. Outside her apartment window, the city was still. No cars, no movement. The rain had paused mid-fall, droplets suspended like glass beads. When she stepped closer to the glass, she saw the reflection first. Not her own, but a sheriff's badge behind her shoulder. She turned. Empty. The hum thickened, pulsing through her body like another heartbeat, one that didn't belong to her. She grabbed the lantern and the Polaroid camera, her only weapons now. The camera whined softly as it powered on. Film counter blinking 06. 6 shots left. She didn't remember loading it. The knock came again. 3 times, patient. Ruiz moved to the door, gun drawn. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice, soft, feminine, close enough that she could feel the breath through the wood. "You can't hide from what you carry." Ruth Hensley's voice. Claire's mother. Dead 7 years. Ruiz swallowed hard. "You're not real." The voice smiled through the door. "Neither is forgetting." Something pressed against the other side of the door. A hand, pale, translucent, leaving a print that glowed faintly before fading. The apartment lights cut out. Ruiz's instincts overrode reason. She yanked the door open, weapon raised. The hallway was empty. No footprints, no water. Only a single photograph taped to the opposite wall. Her own apartment door photographed from behind her, just seconds earlier. Across the bottom, County RD 19, 213. She drove. No thought, no plan, just the road unfurling under flickering streetlights. Every sign she passed blurred into the next. When she reached the edge of Cypress Lake, fog rolled in from the marsh, thick as smoke. The air tasted metallic the way it did after a storm or before one. Her radio crackled to life without warning. Static, then a voice, male, familiar.
Detective Ruiz.
Her hands tightened on the wheel. Who is this? Your file's open again, the voice said. Calm. Certain. Dorsey's voice. You're dead. I'm archived, he corrected. You think that's the same thing? The radio went silent. Then the hum returned, through the speakers, through the steering wheel, through the metal of the car. It grew until she could barely breathe. She swerved off the road, tires sliding into mud. When the car stopped, she realized where she was. The old substation. The one she and Price had found the previous night. The door was ajar now. She took the lantern and stepped out. The fog seemed to thin around its light, but only barely. The wooden sign out front still read Cypress Lake Sheriff's Office. But beneath it, carved crudely with a knife, was a new line of text. Who remembers you? Detective? Inside, the air was thick with mildew and something older. Formaldehyde, the same scent from her soaked clothes. The hallway was lined with evidence lockers. Doors rusted, labels faded. But one locker stood pristine. Label read, Claire Hensley, 1999. Her pulse jumped. She pulled it open. Inside were photos, hundreds of them, each one identical. Claire tied to the chair, head tilted, mouth open in mid-word. But in the later images, she wasn't alone. The second figure, once blurred in the original photo, grew clearer across the sequence. Dorsey, yes. But then, another shape appeared behind him. A reflection in a mirror. Ruiz. Her hand trembled. She flipped through them faster. In the final photo, Claire was gone. Only the chair remained. And on the wall behind it, someone had scrawled her own name.
Elena Ruiz.
The lantern flickered. From the corner of the room, a voice whispered, Took you long enough. Price stepped out of the shadows, soaked, eyes wide but wrong. Too still, pupils blown wide. Ruiz lowered the gun. You followed me. He smiled. You left the door open. What door? He stepped closer, lantern light crawling up his face. His uniform was damp with swamp water. The one hell built, he said. You think you closed it, but it's not yours to close.
Ruiz got twisted.
You went back. I never left. His smile stretched, mechanical. He said you'd come when the time was right. He said the marsh always finds a replacement. The lantern's flame dimmed. For a split second, Price's reflection in the glass shifted. Not his face, but Dorsey's.
Ruiz fired.
The shot tore through the silence. Price fell backward, body crumpling, lantern dropping. The flame sputtered and died. But the darkness didn't come. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing with the same rhythm as the hum. And from Price's fallen body came a wet, rattling exhale. Then another. Then a laugh. Deep, gravelly, older. Dorsey's laugh. Ruiz stumbled back, bile rising. You shouldn't have come alone, the voice said, through Price's mouth. You bring light to the water. It only learns your name faster. She ran. Down the corridor, through peeling paint and shattered windows, until the back door gave way and she spilled into open air. The fog had thickened, curling around her ankles like smoke. Somewhere ahead, faint light shimmered. The same lantern glow she'd followed before. The hum guided her back toward the marsh. Every step sank deeper into mud. The water lapped at her boots like it recognized her. When she reached the edge of the clearing, she froze. Hannah Keene stood in the center of the spiral. Alive, still bound, but upright, eyes open, blank. The ropes floated around her like ribbons underwater, though she stood on dry ground. Around her, Polaroids hung from fishing lines strung between cypress trees, spinning slowly in the breeze. Every photo was of Ruiz, sleeping, driving, talking to Price, working, watching. Hannah's mouth opened. The voice that came out wasn't hers. Do you hear it now? Dorsey. Ruiz raised the camera instead of the gun. You want me to remember? Fine. She took the shot. Flash. White. The photo developed in seconds. In the image, Hannah was gone. Only Ruiz remained, standing where Hannah should be. Behind her, Dorsey's hand rested on her shoulder. The humming reached a peak. The lantern flared. The Polaroids snapped free one by one, fluttering into the air like moths. Ruiz clutched the camera and backed away, but the spiral at her feet began to glow faintly, forming rings of light beneath the mud. The water around her rippled outward, not wind, not current, breathing. "You built this," the voice said, "everywhere and nowhere at once. You found the truth, detective. Now you keep it." The ground gave way. She plunged into the water. Cold closed over her like a door slamming shut. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but blackness. Then faces. Dozens. Claire. Ruth. Lydia. Daniel. All suspended. Eyes open, mouths moving in silent rhythm. They weren't drowning. They were whispering. She felt something press against her chest. A weight, soft and heavy. The lantern. Its flame still burned underwater, flickering like an eye. "Remember," the voices said. "Remember." Ruiz kicked upward. The surface shimmered far above, unreachable. The hum merged with her pulse until she couldn't tell which was which. Just before her lungs gave out, a hand reached down through the light, Hannah's, and pulled her up. She gasped, coughing water and blood. The marsh was silent again. The lantern floated beside her, extinguished. Hannah was gone. No footprints. No trace. Ruiz crawled to the bank, collapsed. In her hand, the Polaroid camera whirred. One last photo ejected. She stared at it through blurred vision. The picture showed her lying on the bank exactly as she was now. And standing behind her, half-shadowed by cypress branches, Dorsey's figure watched. One hand on the shoulder of another silhouette. A woman holding a camera. Her. The caption read, "The marsh remembers through you." Ruiz laughed once, sharp and hollow. She dropped the photo into the mud, but it didn't sink. It floated, face up, catching the first hint of dawn. For a moment, she thought she heard voices again. Faint, distant, calling her name like an echo carried by water. Then nothing. The hum was gone. She stood, soaked, shaking, but alive. She looked back toward the spiral, now smooth water, calm as glass. It reflected her perfectly until it blinked. She drove back to town with the sunrise behind her, every turn of the road feeling rehearsed. When she reached the city limits, her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Same as before. She didn't answer, but the message preview glowed on the screen anyway. "You left the light on." Morning came quietly, almost mercifully. The kind of pale Florida dawn that makes the world look new even when it's rotting underneath. Ruiz parked her car outside the precinct at 6:07 a.m. and sat there, dripping marsh water onto the seat, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her eyes looked older, pupils wide, almost too dark. Behind her, the empty back seat seemed to breathe. Every few seconds she checked the rearview again, convinced she'd see him, Dorsey or Price, or whoever was left wearing their skin. Nothing. Just her, and the faint echo of the hum vibrating through the chassis like a heartbeat in metal. She walked into the building without speaking. The day shift desk sergeant looked up, startled. "Detective Ruiz? Jesus, you okay? You were marked off shift." She didn't answer. She went straight to her office, locked the door, and spread the Polaroids across her desk. 26 of them now. Faces, reflections, duplicates of herself at impossible angles. Every one stamped with a location and a time. County RD 19. 2:13. The hum in her head became the tick of the wall clock. Time had restarted, but she couldn't remember how. Price's desk was empty. His badge lay on top of a sealed evidence envelope. Inside was the last photo she'd taken before he died, the one of Hannah standing in the spiral, Ruiz in her place. The image had changed again overnight. The reflection in the lantern glass was no longer Dorsey. It was her. A knock. Captain Martin. He'd been watching her unravel for months, trying to hide it under concern. "You need to take leave," he said. "Half the department thinks you drowned. You show up covered in mud with no backup, No witnesses. Ruiz cut him off. Where's Price's body? He hesitated. Autopsies in progress. They're saying cardiac arrest. Heart failure, maybe shock. Did they test for contamination? Contamination. The marsh water, she snapped. The preservation agents. The polymer compounds from Dorsey's locker. Martin frowned. Elena, you've been chasing ghosts. She almost laughed. You think ghosts are the problem? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. We're closing the file. Officially. You need to go home. Get some sleep. She stared at him until the silence turned brittle. What if I told you the case isn't done closing us? He sighed, rubbed his temple. You've done good work, but it's time. He left the room. When the door shut, Ruiz looked down at her phone. A new text waited. Unknown number, same as before. From 213. Message, he's in the morgue. She grabbed her keys. The county morgue sat on the edge of town. A low concrete building surrounded by parking lot puddles still reflecting last night's rain. Inside, the air was cold enough to sting. The attendant on duty, a young tech half asleep at his monitor, looked up as she entered. Detective, they said you weren't supposed to. She flashed her badge and kept walking. Where's Price? Drawer 12B. She found it easily. The body was wrapped in white plastic, label neatly typed. Price? Nolan. Deceased 4:17 a.m. She unzipped the sheet halfway. His face was calm, eyes closed.
No visible trauma.
But his hands were clenched around something. She pried one open. Polaroid. Of her. Standing in the morgue doorway, lantern light spilling around her. Caption in the corner. Thank you for remembering. She staggered back, pulse racing. The overhead lights flickered. The hum started again, deeper this time, vibrating through the drawers like 1,000 heartbeats waking at once. She bolted. By the time she reached the parking lot, her phone buzzed again. Same number. You left the lantern behind. She looked at her passenger seat. The lantern sat there, bone dry, flame burning steady though she hadn't lit it. She drove. South, away from Cypress Lake, away from the marsh, from everything. The road blurred into heat haze. She thought if she could just put enough distance between herself and that cursed water, maybe the sound would fade. Didn't. It traveled with her, through the engine, through her pulse, through the air conditioning vents. Halfway down Route 19, she saw the car. Parked on the shoulder, hazards blinking. A blue Honda Civic. Sun-faded but unmistakable. Claire Hensley's car. The one they found abandoned in 1999. Ruiz slowed to a stop. Her hands shook as she stepped out. The air was still heavy. She approached the driver's side. The door hung open exactly as the old reports described. One shoe in the mud. Inside, on the passenger seat, sat another Polaroid. Claire smiling, holding a lantern. Caption. Someone has T.O. keep the light.
Ruiz whispered, No.
But the realization spread through her chest like fire. The case had never been about solving the past. It had been about recruiting its replacement. Dorsey hadn't built a ritual. He'd built continuity. The marsh didn't just preserve bodies. Preserved memory. Her phone rang again. Same number. She answered this time. Detective Ruiz, the voice said. Calm.
Familiar.
Her own. She froze. Who is this? You already know, her voice replied. You've been practicing the lines. Static swallowed the rest. Ruiz dropped the phone, stumbled back toward her car. Her reflection in the window stared back with eyes too dark, too wide. For a moment, the reflection smiled while she didn't. She got in, slammed the door, started the engine. But the dashboard clock no longer read time, just the digits 213 glowing red. No matter how many times she pressed reset, it stayed. She drove blind, headlights carving through fog until she saw the diner lights ahead. The same one Claire had left 26 years ago. Miller's Diner. Closed for years, boarded up, but tonight the neon sign buzzed alive. Open 24 hours. Ruiz parked. She knew she shouldn't go in. But the hum was louder here, rising through the ground like something calling her name from beneath the tiles. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, every booth was empty except one. A woman sat with her back to the window, nursing a cup of coffee that steamed in the cold air. Ruiz approached slowly. "Claire." The woman looked up. She was older now, too old to have vanished in 1999, but her eyes were the same soft brown from every photo. "You came," she said. Ruiz's throat tightened. "You're supposed to be dead." Claire smiled faintly. "Death's just what happens when you stop listening." "What are you?" "Memory," she said. "Same as you." Ruiz sat down across from her. The lantern on the table flickered, though neither of them touched it. Claire leaned forward. "Do you know why the marsh takes us?" Ruiz shook her head. "Because people forget," Claire whispered. "And forgetting breaks the chain. Every time the story fades, it finds someone new to tell it. Someone who can remember." Ruiz's hands trembled. "Dorsey, Lydia, Daniel, you. All of us," Claire said. "Pieces of the same echo. The marsh doesn't keep the dead. Keeps the story alive. You thought you were solving it, but you were just learning the script." Ruiz looked at the lantern. The flame pulsed with her heartbeat. Claire reached across the table and took her hand. "It's your turn, detective. The town needs a keeper. Someone who remembers." Ruiz tried to pull away. "I won't." Claire's grip tightened. Her eyes went black. "You already have." The diner lights blew out. When Ruiz opened her eyes again, she was standing outside in sunlight. The diner was gone. Just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. Her car sat where she'd left it, but the paint was faded, the license plate rusted. A newspaper blew past her feet, headline barely legible. "Cypress Lake detective missing 2 years, cold case files sealed." She stared at her reflection in the car window. Same face, different eyes. Her phone buzzed once more. From 213. Message, "Time to remember, Sheriff Ruiz." The lantern appeared on the dashboard, flame alive again. Behind her, in the distance, thunder rolled over the marsh. The first drops of rain began to fall. She didn't run. She just whispered to the wind, "Claire Hensley, 1999, missing person. Case never closed." And the hum answered. The first storm of the season hit Cypress Lake 3 days after Ruiz's return. Locals said it felt different, heavier somehow, the kind that doesn't just wash a town but rewrites it. Power lines bowed, streets shimmered with floodwater, and through the static of every radio came the same interference. A faint humming underneath the news reports, like feedback from a distant signal that no one could turn off. By then, word had already spread. Detective Elena Ruiz was alive. She was found walking along Route 19 barefoot, clothes soaked, eyes unfocused, carrying a single lantern burning steady in the rain. She didn't remember how long she'd been gone, only that the water let her go. The report from the deputy who found her said she repeated the same words again and again, softly, almost reverently. "It remembers everything we forget." The department called it trauma. The newspapers called it resurrection. By the next morning, her photo was everywhere, front page, headline blazing. "Florida 1999 cold case detective found alive after 2 years missing." No one questioned the details. They never do when a town wants its myth to live.
Ruiz stod silent.
Hospitalized, dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. When the doctor shone a light into her eyes, her pupils contracted too slowly, as if adjusting to another kind of brightness. When asked where she'd been, she said only, "Home." The lantern sat beside her bed, flame still flickering though no one could find a fuel source. It burned without smoke, without heat, just light. Nurses stopped entering her room after one reported hearing whispers every time she got close to it. Captain Martin visited on the 3rd day. He stood by the doorway, hat in hand. "You put this town through hell," he said quietly. Ruiz didn't look up. "It's still there." He sighed. "You want to tell me what happened out there?" She finally met his eyes. "You wouldn't believe it. Try me." "The case is solved," she said simply. But not the way you think. He frowned. You found Dorsey's remains? I found everyone's, she said. They just don't stop being found. Martin shifted uneasily. You're still on leave until psych clears you. I can't have you talking to press or reopening files.
Ruiz smiled fondly.
I won't have to. When he left, the humming resumed. That night, the storm thickened. Rain hammered the windows. Ruiz sat upright in bed, staring at the lantern. Its light pulsed with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The hum came through the hospital vents now, vibrating the walls, synchronized with the thunder outside. She whispered to herself, 213, and then the lights went out. For 13 seconds, the entire hospital was plunged into darkness. When the backup generators kicked in, Ruiz's bed was empty. The lantern was gone. Security footage showed nothing, just static during the blackout, followed by an empty room. By morning, the marsh had flooded again. 2 weeks later, strange things began happening across town. People reported hearing music under the storm drains. A low, melodic hum like a hymn carried through pipes. Streetlights flickered in rhythm with it. Fishermen claimed to see lanterns floating above Hollow Point, bobbing like stars caught in fog. And then the first Polaroid appeared. A mail carrier found it taped to the sheriff's office door. Captain Martin standing outside his home, unaware, photographed from across the street. Captions scrawled in black ink. Remember him. More appeared over the next few days. The diner, the school, the church, each with a photograph of someone local, each captioned the same way. Every timestamp read 2:13 a.m. No fingerprints, no film source, just the same untraceable stock that had haunted the case from the beginning. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some said it was Daniel Hensley returned from hiding. Others said Dorsey's ghost walked again. But a few whispered a name with something like awe. Sheriff Ruiz. At first, Martin dismissed it as hysteria. Until the night his home phone rang at 2:13 a.m. He answered, groggy.
Elena.
No response. Just the faint hum. And a voice beneath it, layered like a recording over static. You forgot her. The line went dead. He drove to the precinct at dawn. On his desk lay a fresh Polaroid. Himself, holding the phone, mouth mid-word. Caption. Remember her. Meanwhile, the town changed in ways too small to notice at first. The floodwaters didn't recede. They shifted, pooling in strange patterns that, from above, formed a spiral. The same one that had marked Hollow Point for decades. Wildlife began avoiding the area. Birds flew wide arcs around it. Locals said they could see faces in the water when the lightning hit. One afternoon, a schoolteacher named Hannah Keene walked into the sheriff's office. The same Hannah who'd vanished 2 years prior. Mud to her knees, hair soaked, but alive. I need to talk to Elena Ruiz, she said. Martin stared. Detective Ruiz is not available. She's waiting, Hannah said. Out there. Out where? The marsh, she whispered. She says the story isn't finished. They tried to hold her for observation, but she slipped out that night. Witnesses claimed they saw her walking down Route 19 toward Hollow Point, barefoot, a lantern in her hand. She was never seen again. The state sent investigators. Federal agents followed. They interviewed Martin, the nurses, anyone who had known Ruiz. The reports were inconsistent. Some said she'd become obsessed with the case. Others that she'd uncovered evidence too dangerous to release. The official conclusion. Missing, presumed deceased. Unofficially, Cypress Lake stopped asking questions. But the hum never stopped. By late summer, storms rolled through weekly, each one beginning precisely at 2:13 a.m. and breaking over the marsh first. Locals learned not to drive that stretch of road after midnight. Travelers reported headlights flickering out as they passed mile 7.3, and some swore they saw a woman in a dark coat standing by the shoulder, lantern in hand, face half-shadowed. When they stopped, she was gone. But sometimes a Polaroid appeared tucked beneath their wipers. Their own car taken from behind. Caption, drive carefully. She remembers. Tourists called it ghost lore. The town called it warning. Then, one night in early September, the storm broke differently. No rain, just wind. The power grid failed. Every light in Cypress Lake went out except one. A single glow over the sheriff's office, visible from miles away. Martin drove straight there. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the desks were covered with Polaroids arranged in neat spirals, hundreds of them. In the center, the lantern burned, steady and soundless. On the wall behind it, written in the same jagged scrawl that had haunted the original investigation. Florida 1999 cold case solved. Families, missing link, turned suspect. It wasn't just a headline. It was a message. Underneath, a smaller line. Every case ends the same way. Someone has TO remember. Martin's knees weakened. Elena, he whispered. Her voice answered from the dark corner of the room. Captain. He turned slowly. She stood there. Alive, unchanged, soaked as if she just stepped out of rain that wasn't falling. Her badge glinted faintly on her coat. You can rest now, she said. What did you do? She smiled softly. Closed the file. What file? All of them. He took a step back. Elena, listen to me. Whatever this is, it isn't real. She tilted her head, studying him. That's what I said to Dorsey once. The lantern flared. When Martin's team arrived the next morning, the office was empty. Only the spiral of Polaroids remained, every officer in the department captured mid-action. And at the center, a single new photo. Martin, standing by the lantern, face peaceful, eyes closed. Caption: Remember him. Weeks later, a storm chaser documenting weather patterns near the marsh uploaded drone footage that made national news. It showed a woman standing ankle-deep in the floodplain, lantern held high, face obscured by rain. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. In the brief lightning flash that followed, the drone captured something behind her. A reflection in the water, hundreds of faces rising just beneath the surface, mouths open as if singing. The footage cut out seconds later. Meteorologists called it interference. Locals called it proof. And now, every year, when the storms return, the same phenomenon repeats. Lights flicker, drains hum, and somewhere near Hollow Point, a lantern glow drifts across the water. The town has stopped calling the police. They know better, because in Cypress Lake, the badge changes hands, but the light never